name's Dr. Justna Muhith.
And could you talk about your early life here in Wales, in Cardiff?
Sure. So I came to Wales when I was very young, actually. I came to the UK when I was about 6 months. We eventually got to Wales. I know we were in a couple of other places before we got to Wales, but I think probably by about a year and a half, we were already in Wales. I grew up in an area not so far from here, Splot, and I must say childhood there was very good. Very good in the sense that our neighbours were very protective and they would support us. We did have certain individuals that obviously, sad to say, were quite racist, but the majority of them were really nice and they would really support us, look after us. I think sort of when I started going to school, I realised that we were different. We had a different faith, and we didn't celebrate Christmas. But the neighbours were really good, actually, because every Christmas they would make sure that we got presents, and we went to their house and got involved in some of the activities that they did. So it was quite varied, but you knew you were different to the majority. So at home, we do our own practices. So my parents would read namaz, and my father would go to the mosque and stuff like that. Admittedly, when we went outside, we were a little bit conservative the way we dressed and so forth. So yeah, we knew that there were differences. I think the differences became more apparent when we moved to Roath.
Yeah.
And I was in my last year of primary school then, and we moved to Roath because excuse me, we were a growing family, and my parents realised that we needed a little bit more integrating, and I guess they'd missed it as well, because my father had to walk quite a distance to come to the mosque and stuff like that. So around this area there was more Asians, there was more Bengalis, there was more sort of halal shops and so forth. So the facilities were really good. So once we moved here then, it became really strict, actually. We had to wear headscarves. We had to make sure if we wore dresses, they were really long, or you had trousers, or you wore salwar kameez. So, we started then going to the mosque regularly. So things did change quite significantly. I think for me, where the point at which I realised how different practices were perceived between communities is probably I was in assembly one day, and as a youngster, you learn all the hymns that the teachers tell you to. And obviously I grew up in an area that was predominantly non-Asian. So I learnt all the hymns, and I was sat in assembly one day and I was involved in the hymns, and I sung throughout the whole assembly. And one of my friends, an Asian friend who I'd made at the time, she said to me, "What's wrong with you?" She said, "Why are you saying hymns? We're Muslims, we're not supposed to say hymns." And obviously at home, we didn't speak English at home, because I guess my parents felt that we spoke enough English in school, and I guess they felt like they were losing their their culture and their way of the way that they were brought up, and for home they wanted to maintain that. But then, of course, it made it really difficult when you got to school because, you know, at school, it's very different. You know, the mannerisms are very different. I do remember, like, at home, my dad used to say, you know, when he was talking to us, you shouldn't look a man in the eye.
Yeah.
And when you go to school, you know, if your teacher's telling you something, if they're addressing you and you're not looking them in the eye, they think you're ignoring them, or, you know, they see it as rude. So that's a very basic example. I really enjoyed doing sciences, and I think probably I kind of have a bit of a rebellious streak in me. Because I remember my brother was going to school and my parents were really driving him and, you know, really encouraging him, you know, to focus, and, you know, they were really proud of his achievements. And I kind of felt, well, you know, I'm doing just as well. And I think the first time I came home and I asked my dad if I could go on to do higher education, and he said no. And, you know, through trial and error, I learned that, you know, crocodile tears work, and they really work on, at least in my case they did anyway, they really worked on my dad. So I knew that the first time I would ask him, he would say, no, absolutely not. There's no negotiating, there's nothing. The second time I would try it and, you know, he'd just turn away. Third time, then I'd use a little bit of tears and stuff, and then he'd say, right, okay, you know what? I'm not doing this. And then as soon as he said something to that effect, you knew you were getting to him, and you knew he would start considering it. So, you know, I sort of had, I would say, you know, quite decent grades from school. And so my father thought, right, okay, you know, maybe it's not so bad if she does her A-levels, since she really wants to do it. But I was told I couldn't go to college because, you know, girls that had gone to college weren't, in their eyes, their, you know, behavior and so forth, and exposure to the world, you know, they didn't really encourage that for a girl, and so therefore, you know, it had to be in school, where I'd done the rest of my studies. When my father passed away, he was still, I would say, very young, very naive, my brother. So when Dad passed away, it was, I was the responsible person. My mom, to be honest, had never paid a bill in her life. But, you know, all of a sudden then the whole family burden was on my shoulders. Everything from emotional to looking after the kids to financial. It was a very challenging, tough time. After I finished my PhD, I went on to work, and I started working in the pharmaceutical industry, and that was really good. But I gotta say again, I think this kind of being different really plays out in all walks of life. Because I can honestly say in my working life, it has been, yeah, sometimes it's been a bit of a challenge, not only in certain instances because you're a woman, but some instances because you're different, you're Asian. And I do recall in my career, at times going to meetings and being told that because I don't drink, they wouldn't pay for a drink for me. So, you know, it's, you sometimes, you know, these things can set you back, but you just have to think that, you know, somehow you just have to find the energy, the motivation in you to carry on. And yes, you know, those times were very testing. Those times were very difficult. They were very personal. Many a time, you know, I would stop and I would think, right, I can't continue doing this. But then I think at that point I thought to myself, well, what is the alternative? The alternative is that you do something that you don't like, or, I mean, actually, in some instances, there isn't an alternative. You just have to carry on. So there were quite a few instances like that as I was, going through my career, where definitely I would say the religious elements people would pick out, and they would use it as your weakness. And often, I mean, as I grew up, I was a very quiet and, sort of shy child, and, even though I would say I have, tremendous energy, I'm not one for confrontation. And so, if somebody would say things like that, then I would just, walk away and, just be really upset behind closed doors. I think now I am more likely to maybe challenge or maybe question people when they sort of say things to me like that. But again, you realize the country that you're in, the culture that you're around, and sometimes it is, you need a living, you need to earn a living, and you have to balance, is it worth saying something, or do I actually really need this job? So, I mean, yeah, it was, work life was, very tough. Then, of course, I did a couple of years working in pharmaceuticals, and after that, then my mum decided that I was old enough. I mean, I think probably a while before that, they decided that, I used to get told this by the community as well, that I was left on the shelf, because I think by that point I was in my 30s, or almost 30. And so I'd finished my PhD, I'd started a career, and, obviously my father had passed away, and like every father has dreams of seeing their daughter getting married, my father was no different. And I remember when he was ill, he had a heart attack, and he died within sort of 3 weeks of having a heart attack. So he was very, very weak, and he pulled me aside and he said, that, I've helped you become this really strong and independent woman, and I would hope that you would make the right choice. But I know that if it were probably, 15 years before that, he wouldn't have said that, But I think at that point he was quite proud by the fact that he could say, I'm confident to say that, my daughter would be able to look after herself. So, I guess I was always kind of a little guilty that, I always knew that that's what my dad had wanted. And, first of all, I wanted an education, then I wanted a career. So when my mum said, right, it's time, you need to settle down, I thought, right, okay, fine. Then my mum sort of said it has to be somebody of her choosing, otherwise she wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. And I mean, it was really hard because, up until that point I was, making decisions for myself, and I knew what was right, what was wrong, and, here I was facing those cultural difficulties again. And, I think myself and my mum always had a bit of a tough relationship, in that, I guess she expected her daughter to grow up like her, and, be at home and be really homely, and I wasn't. I was really outgoing, and I wanted a career, I wanted to go and see the world. So our relationship was very testing. So I decided, right, okay, you know what, I put her through enough, and actually, I guess, I emotionally I felt that maybe I should just take her advice and just agree to what she had suggested. Again, deep down I knew it was wrong, and obviously it would make sort of family life really easy to agree. So, for better or worse, I agreed with it and went along with it, even though I would say in my heart of heart, I don't know, it was just one of those moments where maybe you don't recognize yourself. So I said yes, and we got married, and let's just say I probably went back a couple of generations. The relationship was very difficult because my ex was very, I would say he appeared to be very much from maybe my father's generation, or maybe before that. But I think, again, he wanted to come to the UK, so he'd left the country when he was young. And what you find with people that leave countries behind, or what they call their homeland behind, sometimes they get stuck in a time frame, and they bring that time frame with them, and the rest of the world has moved on. So we had our many struggles, and it was probably, I would say, one of the most testing times in my life. And so then I decided that at some point that I couldn't continue that way, and so we ended the relationship. And then you get into this whole spiral of the community again see that you've done something wrong, and you're the black sheep that they always thought you were. I mean, when I was doing my education, I remember many people would say to my parents, you're doing the wrong thing. Why is your daughter doing education? It's not what girls do. And so 15, 20 years later, here I was again doing the wrong thing, because in the Bengali community, divorce is not a good thing. I think the challenges that I've gone through in life have really made me stronger. And there are a few things in life that I used to believe, and they are: perseverance is the key to success, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think those philosophies have got me through life. And I'm at a juncture now where I have 2 young girls who, as a single mom, I am bringing them up on my own, and they look to me for everything. For their education, for the way that they should behave, the way that they should interact with the world. And so I realized that actually, I can use my energies to support progressing gender equality, which is something that I'm quite passionate about, and there are a few initiatives that I'm involved in to support gender equality and raise the profile. I'm also at the moment working on an initiative looking at raising the profile of ethnicity. and looking at doing that maybe, if possible, with company support, but if not, externally. If anything, my experiences have made me realize that actually learning never ends. You know, life is a big lesson, and what's most important is how you navigate through it. If there's any advice that I could give to my younger self, would probably be sometimes you do have to be selfish. And I think we forget that ultimately we are responsible for our future. The other things I would say is never give up. Giving up is not an option. And as you move through life, the one thing that you should always do is remember, make space for others. If you make space for others, then you help the next generation progress.